better.
I'm offended. This episode's over.
Welcome back to the second episode of the Potato Finance Podcast with my friend Chris Bullock. Chris, how are we doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. I don't usually podcast this early in the day. It's always later at night, so I'm trying to get in gear.
Yeah, this is a little bit different for Chris because Chris also has a podcast and his co-host lives in Bali right now. So obviously there's a little bit of a time change. A lot comes in with that. It's not the most fun thing in the world. I can imagine working out that difference by any means. But Chris, let's get into it a little bit here. Talk a little bit about yourself. How do we know each other? What's your story, your background? Just, you have the floor. It's all you.
Cool. So me and you actually met at the gym. We were both powerlifting at the time. It was my girlfriend, now wife's parents' gym. So it was just kind of us being in the same place, same time. And we kind of were just like working together to try to get better at lifting.
Yeah, I'd say that sums it up pretty well. Like we kind of just met. I think I actually met Downs first. I met him first, and then I started talking to him. And then somehow I met you in Almonte. And then, yeah, we just kind of stayed in touch. And then you recently started a podcast, right?
Yep. Me and Kyle, because he was here, like I said, he lives in Bali, or like you said, he lives in Bali. So I've known him since high school. He came back for a couple months and then couldn't go back to Bali right away.
Was that because of the pandemic?
Exactly, because of the pandemic. So he couldn't come back. So it worked out perfectly for me. He was miserable here. He wanted to go back immediately, but worked out well for me because he had podcasted in the past. So I was like, oh, this will be good. And he's a super smart guy. And just having someone with a little bit of podcasting experience totally helped me out.
What was his podcast about in the past? I didn't even know he had one previously.
It was called The Art of Swiping, and I think it was just about like...
Sounds like a Tinder thing.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it was.
Was it really? Oh my God. That's insane. You know, I see some guys on YouTube, like, I don't know if you've seen this guy, How to Beast. Like, have you ever seen him? But it's basically a channel revolved around, like, guys, like, kind of helping get themselves, I guess, better with girls, like, kind of how to talk to them and all those things. And at first I was like, this is a really stupid channel. This guy's like a real tool. But then I thought about it a little bit more. I thought about kind of the underlying reasons behind it. And I was like, this guy actually might be helping a lot of people.
Probably
like,
helping a ton of
because it's something I feel like, not just guys, but I feel like everyone in general, they want to be able to talk to the opposite sex and really feel comfortable talking to them. And especially in this day and age with so much social media, I think that's actually like a really big problem because they're just like, I'll just slide in their DMs or something like that, as opposed to just going up to them and talking to them.
Okay, so I'm not breaking any news here, but I had referenced my wife earlier. We had some issues and we split for a while, right?
Right.
So I had someone move in who was very good with women. And that wasn't intentional, by the way. I wasn't like, I got to bring in a pickup artist to live with me.
That's funny.
So, no, it just worked out where he was good with women. I wouldn't say terrible, but I'm not the smoothest character in the world. But he was like helping me talk to these girls on dating apps. So it was kind of similar to this guy's channel, but I had a live-in pickup artist with me.
That sounds pretty cool, actually, that you were able to, I guess, find a roommate with that. That probably, especially early on when you had him move in, I'm sure that helped you a lot and kind of helped you feel a little bit more confident and kind of just overall just moving forward and really, I guess, putting yourself back out there and being comfortable with being uncomfortable. Would you say that?
Yeah, for sure. Because like being out of the dating game for like 6 years, it's like, what the do I do?
That's the thing. And I feel like a lot of people, when they're in relationships, they'll look at a single friend that's maybe having trouble and they'll be like, oh, what do I do? Or the friend that is asking that, what do I do? Like, how do I talk about this? And the guy that's in the relationship 4 or 5 years, he just says, just go do it. Like, it's the easiest thing in the world.
It's not.
But then you put yourself back in that situation and you're like, oh my God, this is a lot harder than I thought it was. Like, actually putting yourself out there like that.
Because things change a lot, right? So, like, say, for my case, 6 years ago, maybe what I was doing 6 years ago works, but it's not going to work 6 years later with... everything's just different.
Exactly. Times change so much. Like, if you go back 6 years, I'm trying to think, 6 years ago, there was really, I think the only dating app that was really around that comes to mind is like Tinder. That was the big one. But now there's so many. There's Bumble, there's Match. Well, I guess that's also Tinder. But there's Hinge. There's like so many different ones. It's like, where do you even start? Like, you know?
I think you just, if you're a single guy, just get on all of them.
Right.
Cast a wide net.
You cast a wide net. But I really don't like how society is moving more towards that because I feel like meeting people on Tinder, meeting people on dating apps, that really, I think people think that's the only way, and people are afraid to meet people out in the real world. Like, I feel like if one of us went up to a girl today and we started talking to them, they'd be like, why is this guy talking to me? And granted, I guess we are in a pandemic, so maybe they get a little bit of a pass here. But I feel like in general, they just don't want anything to do with you. Like, why is this guy talking to me?
Yeah, so I think social skills are something that can diminish, right? And in a pandemic, you're not going out and talking to people as often. Like, you're not even going into your place of work and holding conversations. So, like, if you're home and all of your conversations are happening on a digital platform, going back into the world and talking to someone face to face, it's different. Like, I find myself struggling to maintain eye contact now.
Yeah, I've also noticed that. I guess a little bit in myself, but I guess I'm kind of conscious of it. So I'm like, all right, focus, potato. Like, you know, like look up. But I can definitely see how that is a big issue for a lot of people. And especially being like near people and in crowds, like even in the grocery store, I see some people that just like, they're like, I don't know, like an overdrive. They're just running like to get in and out. It's like insane.
Dude, I was in Market Basket the other day and I was freaking the out because there was so many people in there. And then me and Michelle got out and I was like, were you overwhelmed in there? Because I was freaking out a little bit. And it's just because there was so many people and it was like, my goal in life is to not inconvenience anybody.
Right.
I don't want to be in anyone's way. So I'm always conscious, like looking around, like, am I blocking anyone's, like, can everyone get to where they need to go?
Right.
And I'm always thinking about that. And it's probably not a healthy way to go about things. But like me personally, like I just don't want to inconvenience anybody.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean by that. I feel like I'm the same exact thing. I honestly don't really have anything to add to it. I just kind of agree. But let's kind of get back on topic right here. We started talking about your podcast. Why did you ultimately decide to start it? Where did this, I guess, entrepreneurial, I can never pronounce that word on the first try for some reason. Where did that journey, where did this start? Where did it come from?
Entrepreneurial. Yeah, it's a tough word. I got to really...
Definitely a tongue twister, I would say.
Yeah. So I've always been like a huge fan of podcasts. Like I don't even really watch shows anymore or listen to much music. I just watch podcasts, and I've always been like a big just fan. Like I really enjoy watching them, and I've always been like, oh, I want to start a podcast. And then one day I was like, I'm ordering a mic and I'm going to start a podcast. I got to find someone to do it with. Kyle was back and I was like, all right, let's do this.
But you had no really direction you were going. You didn't have anything at all. You're just like, I'm just going to order a mic. I'm going to order, everything I need. I'm going to figure it out as it comes.
Yeah, and I thought the topic of mental health would be good to talk about, especially with like the pandemic and stuff, because I don't know, I feel like more and more people are openly talking about problems they have, but there's still like some sort of stigma with like, especially guys talking about like, hey, I'm depressed, or hey, I'm sad. Like, we're not supposed to talk about that.
I think that's also a very big issue, and I don't really understand why. I feel like it's also partially on us. Like, I feel like we feel we need to keep in all these, I guess, thoughts and feelings we're really having. Yeah. And in all reality, it doesn't matter. Like, no one, this is going to sound kind of bad, might be taken a little bit out of context here, but no one cares in regards to, no one's going to look at you and be like, oh my God, like Josh is feeling this way. He's an idiot. Or like, yeah, Chris is feeling this way. Like he's dumb.
He's
like,
less of a man for talking about his feelings.
Exactly. I think that's the perfect way to put it. But in all reality, like we are all human. We all feel different things. And I think the pandemic has been like something everyone's really suffered from in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just like with being locked in and not being able to have that social interaction and having less distractions, right? In the pandemic, you have less stuff you can do. So you don't constantly have this stuff distracting you from your thoughts and feelings, right? So like, oh, I'm sad, I'm going to go out to the bar, I'm going to hang out with some friends. Like for a while, there was none of that. It was just you, your phone, and your thoughts.
Right. I think especially in the pandemic, and we're kind of on the back nine of it, hopefully knock on wood for everyone's sake, but I think we're kind of still in that awkward in-between where it's like some people are like, all right, forget it, like I'm ready to go and do what I want. And then some people are like, no, I should wait a little bit longer. So some people are starting to travel, some people are starting to go out, and some people are posting a lot of pictures on social media. Some people are really starting to advertise their lives a little bit more because there's more things to advertise now. And I think that affects those people that maybe are just kind of laying low and not doing anything because that stuff's highlighted on all their social media pages, their Facebook pages, Instagram, MySpace. If anyone's still on there, I doubt it, but I'm sure someone out there listening to this is still on there.
Really showing your age there.
Yeah, right. I am getting old there. But I think that really, really affects a lot of people, and I think it's really worth talking about, to be perfectly honest.
No, yeah, for sure. And I mean, I feel like in the pandemic, everyone had all this free time and they spent way too much time on the internet. So now everyone's like, they don't have like these pictures to post of them doing cool stuff. So they're just blasting out these radical opinions.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. But let's kind of get back towards the podcast here. So you said you started it. You just decided to start it. You didn't really have a direction you were going in. You said you came across it kind of because of the pandemic. Where do you want to go with this? Where do you want to fast forward 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 5 years with this podcast? Do you still see yourself doing it in 5 years? Is this just kind of to pass the time these days? Is it just for fun? Do you want sponsors? Kind of lay out your entire plan for us.
So like, it sounds bad, but I don't really have a plan, right? So if this does take off and I get sponsors and we get a lot of people listening to it, that's great. But if it doesn't, I'm still okay doing it every month because I really enjoy sitting down, having a conversation with someone for over an hour without, looking at my phone, playing video games, doing something else to distract me, just having an open conversation with someone. It's honestly helped my mental health a bunch. And I mean, my overall goal is for someone to listen to it, relate to it, and say, okay, I'm not alone there.
I think that's good. I think you're going kind of in the right direction, but I'm going to give you some unsolicited advice here and kind of put in my 2 cents. So I think the base, I think, is okay. Like, you're doing it because you enjoy it. I think that's important. Like, I enjoy making YouTube videos. I enjoy this podcast. I enjoy all the things I do because, YouTube videos, it's cool to do like these creative edits. It's cool to like talk about money, which is more of a taboo topic and not too many people want to talk about, which I can understand.
Yeah.
It's cool to, have a podcast, have one of my friends on there that maybe I haven't seen in a while, catch up, network, all those things, maybe travel one day depending on where this goes over the course of so many weeks. So I think the fact that you're doing it for fun is definitely a good first step, because if you're not doing it for fun, then you're just going to lose interest and stop doing it eventually, in my opinion.
Sorry to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
But I don't want it to feel like it's a job. I look forward to, like, even though, like, me and Kyle, 12-hour time difference, right? So, like, I'm doing it at, like, 11 o'clock at night on a weekday, but I still look forward to it,
Right.
I don't want to be like, oh, I got to record tonight just for the sake of putting out content. I want to actually enjoy the content that I'm putting out and look forward to it, because if I'm not, I think that's going to be easily picked up by people viewing the content.
I agree. How does he feel about that? How does he feel? Does he also in the same boat? He's doing it just for fun. He doesn't really care what happens. He's just like, I just enjoy getting on and talking to one of my friends for a few hours.
Yeah, and it seems to be that way. I think we both do it. Like, we just enjoy having a conversation. We're both in the same mindset of, if it goes somewhere, that's great. But if it doesn't, I'm not going to, like, be crushed over it.
Right. Now, here comes my unsolicited advice.
Okay.
I think if I were you guys, I'd say I would probably lay out a little bit more of a plan. Because, and this doesn't have to be, like, I guess, somewhat specific, but not overly specific, especially to start, because you want to shoot for something. Like, even if you're just doing this for fun, it's like, is it going to be fun if you have, say, 10,000 subscribers or 10 subscribers?
I think it'll be way more fun with 10,000.
Exactly. So even if you're just doing it for fun, you're like, I don't care. You might as well maximize your time and just see what happens.
Yeah, and I mean, we have kind of been planning more. Like, before a show, we wouldn't ever prepare. Like, I would call him, we'd call each other, or when he was here, he'd come over and we'd say, hey, what do you want to talk about?
Move this way a little bit to frame the camera. Sorry, I'm not even going to cut that out.
Yeah,
just
no
keep
worries.
going.
So we would, like, get together and, like, just kind of talk for, like, 10 minutes and then go hit record and just keep talking.
Right.
So now we actually kind of plan things out. We just launched a Patreon. go sign up.
Be linked in the description.
Yes. So we just got on a Patreon, and it kind of like gave us a kick in the ass when we started getting subscribers to it. So we're like, okay, we need to.
It's a good feeling, isn't it? It's a fantastic feeling when someone's like, wow, they really see value in what I'm doing. Yeah. So it just makes you want to put out more content and really provide more value, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's giving us like more content to have to put out there, right? So it's making us better as podcasters.
Right.
So like I have a solo one on there where I talk for like a half hour, 45 minutes sometimes, and that's just me rambling.
Is that weird talking by yourself?
Yeah, kind of.
Especially at first, right? I remember when I first started making YouTube videos, I was like, wow, I am so awkward in front of the camera. Even this, I still feel a little uncomfortable. Definitely more comfortable than the first one when Nick was on.
Yeah.
But still a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit awkward, but guys, that just comes over time. Like when you start something new, you're just going to be a little bit uncomfortable to start.
It just takes reps, like with anything. Anything in life, it just takes repetition, getting more comfortable. Like I hope people can listen to like the first couple episodes of my podcast, and then by the end, they're like, wow, they got a lot better by this episode. You know, like, and that just shows growth. So
to kind of maximize, going back to that a little bit, I really think that you need to have video on your podcast. I really think that because, and listen why. So with podcasts, they're very hard to get off the ground, especially at first, if you don't have anything else going for you, because there's no real algorithm for Spotify and iTunes. But with YouTube, there's an algorithm. I think you guys should post bits on TikTok. I think that would do a lot for you. I think posting a full video on YouTube would do a lot for you, because all you need is the camera. It's not too much more work. And I mean, you have an editor. So, I mean, if he knows how to do it and he wants to do it, I think that would be great. I think you'll reach a new audience, and I think that'll definitely really, I guess, accelerate your growth.
Yeah, so the problem with that is Kyle being in Bali, right? So we tried to do, it was like Zencaster or something like that, but we had a good conversation, and it was going really well, and then we lost all of it because it got, the internet connection in Bali sucks.
Yeah, I've gathered that.
Yeah, it's not good. So having the video, that's a challenge, us being on different sides of the planet.
Yeah. What I would do.
Yeah, give me some ideas.
This is what I would do, and I actually talked a little bit to someone who's very bigger, just like I commented on one of his videos and he responded. So he did.
You can name drop. You got a name drop.
He did a podcast. He has a podcast, and what he did, I don't know where the other person was located. I actually didn't even listen to the entire thing. I just asked him, I'm like, how did you do that? What he did was he had one camera set up here, so obviously in the United States, and then Kaya would set one up in Bali, and then Jake would just put it together.
That's a good idea.
That's what he did. It came out really, really well, because I was thinking at first too, I'm like, I guess we can do it virtual for convenience sake, but I'm like, that's kind of a, it's not going to come out very good. The audio's not going to be as good as opposed to talking into a microphone. The camera quality is definitely not going to be as good on a potato Mac camera.
Yeah.
So I think if you guys did that, and obviously the camera's an upfront cost, it's an investment, but I think if you guys did that, that would be awesome. It'd come out really, really well.
Yeah, I'm totally open to do that. And like what you were saying before, like I prefer the in-person conversation rather than like the virtual, I'll talk, you talk.
Right.
But I mean, I think we've done a pretty good job of like, we just like flow pretty well together. So it hasn't been like awful at all. That's actually been great in my opinion.
I haven't noticed too much of a difference in the audio quality, to be honest, because I just haven't. I can tell a little bit that he's somewhere else. His quality is a little bit worse than yours is, but honestly, if I didn't know that, I don't think I would really think too much of it.
Yeah, it's well, the way we do it is he records on Audacity, I record on Audacity,
right,
and then when it comes time, Jake just takes our two separate files and clips them together. So it's not like we're recording off of Discord or something like that.
Right.
So it works out fine.
How long does it take him to edit that? Do you have any idea?
I know I don't really have an idea. I think he'll sit down and it takes him a couple of hours.
Because I would imagine there's not too many cuts he has to make, but at the same time, it's like an hour-long podcast. So if you go through it once or twice, even like, just straight through, that's 2 hours if you don't make a single cut.
Yeah.
So he probably, obviously I don't know what he's doing. I don't even know if he's watching this, so sorry, Jake, if I offended you. But I'd imagine what he does is he kind of goes through it, makes his cuts, and then goes through it again, and that's like probably 2 or 3 hours right there.
Yeah, it definitely takes a little while. He definitely has the hard job in the podcast because me and Kyle just have to hit record and start talking. But,
yeah.
Yeah, he does a Thank God, because there's so many times where me and Kyle have been talking and we said something that we shouldn't say on a podcast, or
Right.
like we just like kind of stop, and I'm like, oh man, because I would not be cutting that stuff out. The first episode we released was completely just like, yeah, let's throw it up.
The first episode that you guys released, I actually think was my favorite one.
Well, that was the one where we just jumped right in. We're like, let's talk about being depressed. And
Right.
We kind of drifted off, and then we got that email from the listener, who's also a close friend, but kind of like put us in check. Like, you guys aren't really doing what you set out to do.
I honestly agree a lot with what he said. Not everything, but
Yeah, and me and Kyle are the same.
right. The bottom line I agree with, because the way I look at it is money or time is an exchange for value. So it's like, why should I not waste my time, but why should I spend my time? Why should I pay someone for something that I'm not getting value out of? That's the way I look at it. And I think if you start to look at things like that, I think your podcast is going to do very, very well. Because I say that when I record a video or a podcast now, I say, all right, if I was someone listening to this podcast, if I was someone watching this video, why do I want to do it? What value am I getting out of it? And why do I want to come back and listen again or watch again?
Yeah, I mean, for you, you have an extra layer, right? Because you're giving valuable finance information, right? And my main goal... Well, I mean, our main goal at first was to talk about mental health issues, right? But
right.
We trailed off of that, and we were just trying to be like somewhat entertaining. So we want to bring those two together, be entertaining and be relatable for people also going through tough stuff, because everyone's going through something.
I agree. I like that idea a lot. I just think, I'm not trying to offend you here. I think you need to execute a little bit better.
I'm offended. This episode's over.
But if you guys just execute, like, just at the beginning of every video, go through some sort of issue that someone might be having that's depressed. Go through one habit that maybe you've tried for the week or maybe for the month. And that's something I'm trying to do now. I'm trying to try one habit every single month, see how I like it, implement it if I like it, or just cut it out again if I don't.
Yeah, so that's kind of like what we're doing. And that email that we got kind of gave us like a kick in the ass. Like, let's be more organized. So like one thing we started doing in the beginning but trailed off was like weekly check-ins with me and Kyle, right? Mm-hmm. So there was one episode that we did, and it was like super personal about like what went on with me and my wife, what's going on with me and like a handful of friends.
That was the last episode, right?
2 episodes ago. We released one last Monday, so you're behind.
I tried.
Yeah, I mean, you keep up, and it's cool. Like, it feels good. Like, I'm sure you can relate when someone reaches out to you and talks to you about the content you're putting out, and they're like, dude, this is awesome. Or like, hey, I could really relate to that. It feels so fucking good.
Especially when it's someone that you haven't talked to in so many years.
Oh, dude, yeah. After I released the first episode, a bunch of people from high school I haven't talked to in so long were like, hey, you've come like a long way. This is really good stuff.
It's a fantastic feeling.
Yeah.
Last summer, and I talk about this in the video I'm releasing. I actually already have this video up by the time you guys are seeing this. It's the one about the lessons I've learned from YouTube. But last summer I was playing golf, and I saw someone I went to high school with, and I hadn't talked to him since he graduated, because he's a couple years older than I am. And he came up to me. I didn't even recognize him. He just started talking to me about my YouTube channel, how there was great content on there. And I was blown away, because not that we didn't get along when we were in high school, but we didn't really talk to each other. We played sports together, but he was just someone that was kind of there. I didn't think too much of him. He probably didn't think too much of me. And he came up to me and he said he was watching them all. I thought they were really good. I'm like, wow, that was a fantastic feeling.
Yeah, because there's no reason for him to check out your content, and there's no reason for him to even approach you about your content.
None. But that also makes me think, all right, there's someone out there maybe that's trying, in my case, that's maybe trying to figure out their finances, trying to get better at finances, and maybe they spend their time listening to this podcast or watching my YouTube videos, and that really motivates me to say, on those days I'm just kind of tired and I'm like, I can do this tomorrow, to say no, because this person, I guess, is counting on me to really put out this content, to really give them some sort of value so they can continue pushing forward.
And that's the key thing there. You're providing value to somebody.
Exactly. Now that we've kind of, I guess, dabbled a little bit, gotten more towards the topic of finance, let's go into that briefly, and then we're going to go into mental health a little bit here.
Cool.
So talk to me about your investing strategy, what you invest, how you invest, all those things.
So this is great because I can use someone like you. I get value out of your content, as far as learning about how to invest and where should I invest, blah, blah, blah. I've approached you about being my financial consultant for free. I'm not going to pay you.
None of this is financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. Continue.
Why aren't you a financial advisor? You know a lot about it. Can't you go? I mean, I'm a moron.
Because
I'm perfect for the Potato Finance podcast because when it comes to finance, potato.
you're asking me how come I don't go become a financial advisor?
Is that not something you want to do?
I believe in everything I preach is you need to make your own decisions with your own money. Like, I don't mind, obviously I don't mind helping people. I like helping people. I don't mind showing the horse the water, but it's up to the horse whether they want to drink it or not. Because I don't work for your money.
No.
You work for your money. Why should I tell you what to do with your money?
And that's a great way to look at it because I'm sure a lot of people with your knowledge on finance would be like, okay, I can tell people what to do with their money and they can pay me for it. But
yeah,
you're
and
teaching smart investing strategies, which is super important. And it's more valuable in the long term for someone to learn how to do that themselves with the information you give them than you just say, here's some money, invest it.
It's going to feel a lot better, too, to watch your portfolio grow at a more, I guess, scalable and an exponential rate as opposed to just giving it to some guy and having it do it. Now, if you're like really busy, that's a different story. Like, say you have, I guess, multiple jobs, maybe you have successful businesses. Like, I know Max Junin goes to a financial advisor, I'm pretty sure. And obviously, he's done well. And I mean, he has successful businesses. So to him, it's worth it to pay that money to have someone else invest the money for him so he can make millions selling candy.
Yeah.
But for someone like us, I don't know if that's necessarily the best move, because if it fails, then we might be in a little bit of trouble. If it fails for him, then I mean, he still has, 7-figure candy businesses, the clothing line, like he'll be fine. But that's kind of like why I don't do it. But do you invest? I know you said you have a 401k. Do you invest outside of that? Do you have a Roth? Do you have any sort of brokerage account? Talk about that a little bit.
I do have a Roth IRA, or me and my wife do. I don't really know much about that. Her parents are really, really good with money.
They own their own business, right?
Yeah, and they've done a lot through real estate and investing in properties. So that's where I want to go, eventually buy properties and rent those out, right? So my next purchase, once I sell the current house that I'm in, is to get a multifamily, right? So the way I've mapped it out, this may sound stupid, like I said, potato. I'm going to get a multifamily, right? Rent out the other side.
Right.
Eventually, move out of that multifamily, rent out both sides, keep that property, and get another non-multifamily for me and my family.
I think that's a good idea.
I think that's just like the way to do it. Like, you can rent out a multifamily and they can pay for the whole mortgage of that house.
Right.
And in the meantime, you're saving all that cash to, move to a house for yourself, and maybe even enough cash to buy another multifamily.
Right. I completely agree.
So I think real estate is where you can make a lot of money.
I like the idea of real estate. I do. But I also push people, and Nick and I talked about this on the first episode. I really push people to go more towards the stock market first, because I feel like real estate is just more of a process. And I feel like, honestly, it's more of a commitment. Think of it, when you first start getting into investing, if you want to break up with a stock, you want to sell a stock, you can do that assuming the market's open like that. Swipe up on Robinhood, you're done. It might be a little bit harder to do that in real estate, but on the flip side, real estate could actually be a good investment at first, because you won't get the opportunity to panic sell in a certain way. So if the stock market's going down because of maybe the president said something, or maybe a pandemic, it's very easy to swipe up and sell.
Or Elon Musk said something.
Elon Musk, that's Bitcoin actually. That's more of a cryptocurrency
Dogecoin.
thing. Dogecoin.
Time to buy the dip.
Moon. Don't buy Dogecoin, please.
Okay. I was going to ask you that, so I'm glad we got into it.
We'll talk about that in a second. But with real estate, say the housing market crashes, or assuming your house is going to get foreclosed, it's very tough to just put that up on the market and get rid of it.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a lot more that goes into real estate too, especially if you're the one that's owning these properties. Now you have to manage these properties.
Exactly.
So it's like another job. Like, I know my in-laws, like my father-in-law is a very handyman, and he's all self-taught. He became a licensed contractor just learning this stuff on his own. Me, on the other hand, he had to remodel my whole house. I was trying to help him, but potato handyman as well. So having these skills is really helpful when you have these real estate properties, because if you don't know how to fix this stuff, you're paying people to fix this stuff.
I agree completely.
So there's way more overhead.
But the thing with that is, it comes down to, opportunity cost at the same time. I feel like if I pay these people this amount of money, am I going to make more money doing something else? Like, for example, sometimes I say to myself, it's easier to order takeout. It's easier to do these things because if I go and cook, that kills an hour, hour and a half, then I got to clean maybe a half hour. Sometimes it's just easier to order takeout or even make something for the entire week than cook like a real fresh meal every single day because I just have more time and my time is very valuable. I could be editing a podcast. I could be editing a YouTube video. I could be looking into the stock that I'm like really close to buying. I feel like all those things come into consideration and I don't think people take opportunity cost into consideration enough.
Yes, and here's the thing. So you're smart with your time, right? So you say, I can spend this time cooking or I can order takeout, pick it up. So
Right.
what you're going to do with your time is very important. Me, I'll be like, oh, I don't have to cook. I'll play video games for a little bit. And it's doing something valuable with your time.
Right. This might come because during my undergrad, I really went to school and worked full time. So I didn't really have, a ton of time to screw around. If it was like, I had a couple of hours free in the morning, it was like, I'm doing homework, I'm studying. So maybe that's where the time management comes from. I'm really not too sure, but I do value my time a lot. I do, as I say in a lot of my videos, I feel like it's just one of the most invaluable assets you can have. And you can get, you lose millions of dollars, you can get that back, but you can't get back your time. And I think that's the most valuable thing that you can ever take into consideration.
Not to blow up your spot, but I do see an Xbox.
Dude, that has not been touched in I don't even know how long. I haven't played Xbox in years. Actually, one of my friends said to me the other day, he's like, oh, I saw you on Xbox, like my gamer tag. He saw me on his friends list. He's like, I was going to delete you, but I just left you on there just in case, just in case we get the band back together. We're not getting the band back together, though, because we're making podcasts, making YouTube videos, and we value our time.
Yes, but I mean, one of the things we wanted to talk about today, not to transition away from finance, but mental health and, doing things that make you happy. So for me, like if I don't need a release or something, I might not be doing something with my time that's going to make me money, but like it's a break from reality.
Oh, I completely agree. There's definitely, I think you need to have a balance of some sort because I think if you just move towards, you really focus on this thing, it's just going to become work at the end of the day and it's not going to become fun. So I think everyone needs a break from reality somehow, some way. For some people like you, it might be video games. I have never been the biggest video game person. I've always gone through phases. I might play for a few weeks, a few months, then it just eventually tapers off. So I think at the end of the day, it's just not that important to me.
Yeah, exactly. And like I'm the same way too. Like there are more times where I'm focused more on like my health and fitness, and there's more times where I'm like, I just kind of want to play video games because it's easier.
Right. But I also think it comes down to you really have to allocate the time to the necessary things. Like, for example, it might not be the best thing in the world to play video games for 10 hours a day.
Oh, yeah, that's unhealthy. That's a different mental health issue you got to address.
Let's talk about Dogecoin a little bit. You brought that up earlier.
I know nothing about cryptocurrency. I just know buy the dip, diamond hands. That's all I know.
Do you own Dogecoin?
I don't own any crypto.
Good. Don't own Dogecoin. Here's how I think about it. So I think this whole thing from Dogecoin, from Elon Musk, from Mark Cuban, I think it's a complete PR stunt. I really think it makes what Mark Cuban did, I think was super, super smart. And I said this, I don't know if I said it in a video. Maybe I did. I might have said it in the Dogecoin video. I definitely said it on TikTok. But I really feel like Mark Cuban did that as a business move because this is a very, very hyped up coin, a meme coin that everyone's talking about. Obviously, not only the NBA, baseball, hockey, football, they've lost so much money this year. So much money. And it's not just the players that are making millions of dollars because they're still getting their salary. It's like the guy that cleans up the arena, the guy that, wipes the floor, the guy that cleans the locker room. Those type of guys are the guys that aren't making any money. And obviously, in turn, because people aren't coming to the stands, everyone that is involved is losing money. So I really think Mark Cuban, what he did, he basically just said, let me open up this cryptocurrency so people can buy the merchandise.
Wait, was it Mark Cuban that started Dogecoin?
No.
Oh, okay.
He just allowed the Mavs, people that bought Mavs gear, you can buy it using Dogecoin.
Okay, yeah, see, I'm an idiot. That's even asking if Mark Cuban started Dogecoin. It was a dumb question. Cut this out.
He did not discover Dogecoin by any means. I'm going to leave it in, that's for sure.
Clip it.
But I think they were already accepting Bitcoin, they were already accepting Ethereum, and they were already accepting other cryptocurrencies, I believe. So why not just open it up? Why not open it up to everyone else that's talking about this coin? You'll make more money, and their sales skyrocketed because of doing this. So I think it was a fantastic move all around. Plus, he already said Dogecoin has no intrinsic value. So I really think he just did it as a business move. As for Elon Musk, I think he's just a big troll. He did it with GameStop. He did it with Dogecoin. I think he was just trolling. I really don't think he sees any intrinsic value in Dogecoin at all either.
Maybe he on having the power to manipulate the market that much, like having that much influence where a simple tweet can completely crash the coin or bring it back up. Like, imagine the feeling being able to just put it on the table.
That's one reason I don't buy any crypto. I'm very interested in Coinbase. I'm still looking into that. Actually, I'm going to make a Coinbase video soon. You guys might have already seen it by the time this goes live. But crypto interests me, but it also worries me because one person can have that much fluctuation on the market. Now, I don't think this is sustainable over the long term. I don't know a ton about crypto. I'm still looking into it, but that is one concern I have right now. Is the market going to crash every time Elon tweets something about it? That is something I really want to dig a little bit into more. And what if there's multiple Elons? Like, what if Jeff Bezos starts tweeting stuff? What if Warren Buffett already has said he's not a big fan of it? What if Tim Cook doesn't like it anymore? What if all these things happen? Is the market just going to continue to tank? Over the long term, I really like Bitcoin. I really like Ethereum. I'm not going to buy Dogecoin, but I am going to dig a little bit more into those two.
Yeah, and it's just like, it's kind of like gambling, right? So when something is that volatile, like, you're taking a massive risk, right? So
right. You'd
rather stick with something that's not going to go up and down, up and down, up and down. You're looking for steady growth.
Yes, but the volatility doesn't really bother me. It's more so that one person can affect the market that much. And the thing that also scares me about crypto is there's no, I guess, fundamentals you can say behind it. Like, for example, you buy a stock. If the stock is undervalued and they continue to perform well, they continue to execute, they keep beating their numbers, they keep bringing in exponential revenue, they increase their bottom line, they increase the percentage on the bottom line, they do all these things, eventually the stock price is going to follow the success of the company.
Yep.
In crypto, it's more so, okay, you buy it, no one else wants to buy it, it's not going to go up. And that scares me.
Yeah, so it's based on everyone else
exactly
buying it, not off the success of the company.
Exactly. I also don't like Doge because, well, it was started as a joke.
It's a meme stock.
It was started as a joke to make fun of Bitcoin, and the guy who discovered even said he's like, I'm kind of like laughing at it now. Now, people have made a lot of money off it. Some people have made millions, which I think is, good for them.
Yeah, let a little guy get their cash.
Yeah, but I also think it's going to lead to a lot of problems with people. Not only Dogecoin, but like AMC and GameStop, because I think they're going to think that happens a lot, and they think they can get lucky like all the time. They're like, oh, I'll just put 10 grand in and then I'll win, $1 million. It doesn't work like that. That's like a once in a lifetime type thing, I feel like.
So now, do you see, you just said once in a lifetime thing, but do you see a trend in these people, like the Wall Street bets on Reddit, pumping up the GameStop, pumping up the AMC? Like, do you see this continuing with different failing businesses?
I think in the short term, I don't think we'll be talking about this in 20 years or so.
Okay, and that's the most important thing, right? When you're saying you're investing in the stock market, you're worried about where that stock or where your money is going to be in 20 years.
Exactly. And plus, the thing is, it's cool to, I guess, look in hindsight and say, oh, if I put $1,000 into Dogecoin, if I put $1,000 into AMC at this time, I would have made this much money. It's very, very easy to look at it in hindsight.
Yeah, if I bet on the Islanders to beat the Bruins in 6, then I would have made some money.
Exactly. But you didn't. That's the thing. You didn't. And the problem is, I think people think that that's going to happen all the time. And the real problem is finding them before they take off. Because it's easy to find AMC. It's easy to find GameStop when it's up 200, 300, 1,000%.
Yeah. It's
very, very hard to predict that stock's going to pop off before it even starts popping off.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's almost impossible. I'm glad you said before it pops off, it's important. So I heard someone on another podcast say that if you're investing in these coins by the time they hit these apps, Coinbase, Robinhood, I think Venmo now you can do crypto, it's too late. Do you find that to be true?
Yeah, I think it's just luck. I think it's just comes down to luck and just right place, right time at the end of the day. I don't think there's any way to really predict the stock's going to go up 1,000+% over the course of a week. I just don't think that's realistic.
No, yeah, there's a lot of luck involved because, like you said, it's not based off the success of something. It's based on what if other people are buying it.
Right. So let's transition a little bit here because I told you we are going to talk about mental health a little bit because that's what your podcast is about. So how do you think when you start a side hustle or a business, whatever the case may be, how does mental health play into that?
Well, it depends person to person, right? So like someone
Obviously.
like me, I'm okay having more on my plate, and it comes down to the side hustle as well. So like if it's something you like doing, it's gonna improve your mental health. But if you're doing it like, okay, I hope this takes off, I want this to make me money. You go into it that way, it's just gonna be like a job. One, you're not gonna want to do it, and two, if it's not taking off right away, that's going to bring you down and you're going to lose that enthusiasm and you're going to be more upset because it's not doing what you want it to do.
I think that's a great point, and I think that's why kind of the first 2 times I really tried to start a YouTube channel, I ultimately failed because the first time I was strictly in it for the money. I only wanted to do it for the money, and it was a fitness channel, so this is a long, long time ago. But I only wanted the money, and I ultimately stopped doing it. The second time, I was just really busy. I didn't have the time. I didn't want to put in the work, and that's what it came down to. This third time, I decided I like doing this. I've always been a fan of, multimedia in high school, always been a fan of editing things. And then I decided I know it's going to take time. It just comes down to putting in the work, and that's what I decided to do. But at a certain point, I feel like when you do it for so long and nothing's come out of it, you're not making any sort of money on it, and you're putting in all these hours. Like I get up super early and I stay up super late working on this stuff. Like I usually get up between 4 and 5 in the morning.
Yeah, you put a lot, like your YouTube videos are awesome. And you've only, like I've seen over the course of time, like your editing has gone up, like you're doing a lot. Like you sent me a clip of what you and Nick did on the last episode.
Right.
The clip looked awesome. Like I see a lot of like people with huge podcasts doing like similar style clips to that, and you executed and it looks awesome.
Thank you. That took a very long time. You guys have already seen this by the time this has come out, but that 20-second clip of me and Nick talking, that took over an hour to make. That's literally all I did before Chris got here. I worked on that for well over an hour.
And that's the big thing too. You have to want to put in the effort, right? So if the payoff isn't worth the effort, for you the payoff is worth the effort.
Right.
So there's some people that might get into something like this where they put in all this work and it's just like, well, that wasn't worth it.
Right.
It's worth it for you.
But how do you kind of, I guess, get away from that feeling of doubt when you're putting in all this work, you're putting in all this effort, and nothing's coming of it? Maybe you're not getting the subscribers you want. Maybe the money's not there. And after so many months or maybe years of doing it, I think it's only natural as humans to have that self-doubt creep in and be like, what am I doing? Like, am I just wasting my time? Should I be just spend it playing video games? Should I just spend it with my family? Because that's another thing. When you do all this stuff, you need to have some sort of balance because your family is also going to want to see you. Your friends are going to be like, do you just not like us anymore? I feel like there's so much more that goes into it. How do you really go about making that balance? How do you go about keeping on track and just keep saying, all right, it's a long-term vision. I really just got to stay focused. I know it's going to get there eventually.
Well, having like that balance is super important, right? So, I mean, since me and my wife got back together, there are certain nights where it's like, okay, we're not, like, you're going to fall asleep without me. Like, she understands that, and I'm going to be in the room recording for a little bit. But, you have to have those certain days. So being scheduled and regimented is super important so you can successfully achieve that balance you're looking for.
Right. I think it helps when you can really set a schedule. Like, I know some people are like, all right, I am going to get up early and work on this, and this for this many hours. I have this to do in the afternoon. Obviously, you might have work in the middle there, but I think it's so important to lay out a structure and really kind of lay out all, I guess, appointments per se, for lack of a better term, throughout the course of a day, because then you're going to be a lot more punctual. You're going to be much, much more on time. And I think you're really going to value your time a lot more when you really start to lay out where your time is going.
Yeah, and you can, like, it depends on how you look at it, right? So if you look at these as tasks you have to do versus tasks you want to do, like, the mind is a very tricky thing, and you can trick yourself into, like, if you set these up as goals, right?
Right.
I want to get this done today. Even if while you're doing it, you're like, oh, this kind of sucks. When you get it done, you're like, that's a thing off the list.
Right.
Right. Writing down these goals and having the schedule is very beneficial, I think.
Right.
If you want to be successful.
Two things. So I read a study once that I might butcher this a little bit. If anyone's watching this or everyone's listening to this that has also read this study, please correct me. But someone talked about, and it was in a Matt Diavella video, but he talked about how that there was some trial done that they were trying to decrease complications during brain surgery. And all the doctor or whoever was working on it, all he did was decrease complications in brain surgery by 35%. He implemented a simple checklist. And that's because the thinking was taken out of it. Yeah. Like all you have to, and sometimes this applies, obviously, if this applies to brain surgery, you can probably also use it. And it's going to also be effective because brain surgery obviously might be looked at as complex. But the thinking's taken out of it. And all you have to do is just go down the list. And I do this sometimes too. I'm like, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do this. And I'm all over the place. And I just make a simple checklist and I feel much more relaxed. I feel much more calm. And I'm like, this is what I have to do. Let me just go through the list and check it off. But secondly, going back to what you said about looking at it as more of, I guess, a task you have to do, and that's going to make it not fun. I watched a video from Ali Abdaal, and he made a very, very, very good point. And I would recommend everyone listening to this, everyone watching this, try this. So one thing he changed and one thing he started to implement was he said, instead of saying, I have to do this, say, I get to do this. And I think that kind of flips a switch and is more, I guess, of an optimistic mindset. And I think by saying that, and I've also tried to do this recently since I saw that video, I feel I'm a lot more excited to do things. I always like editing, but I'm much, much more excited to edit when I say I get to edit this video, I get to figure out this edit, I get to, film B-roll. I feel like I'm a lot more excited to do it, and I just think it's something everyone should at least try at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think, especially when it comes to like editing, like putting content out, you have something you can look at afterwards, like all that work I did produced this.
Right.
And being proud of the thing that you put together. So it's even if you don't have like a material thing or a visual thing you can see at the end of doing that task, just think of the end result and the benefits of it.
Right.
So that's the main thing.
What are some things, maybe habits we'll say, that people can do to really not only be successful when starting a side hustle or business, but also successful in the mental portion of things, so they don't necessarily have weak mental health? Because that's also important. People think that physical fitness is the only thing that keeps you in shape, but you also have to be in shape mentally. What are some habits people can implement to kind of get in shape or stay in shape mentally?
So we talked about this a little earlier, like having like a good balance, right? Make sure you're fitting in those things that you enjoy to do, those leisure activities, whether it's reading, exercise, video games, whatever the hell it is. Just make sure you have that balance and you're still fitting in those things that are, well, to you, leisurely.
Right.
So, and as stupid as it sounds, write things down that you want to do.
I agree.
Because me and Kyle talked about this on the last episode. If you write these things down and you slowly check them off the list, you're going to feel not only accomplished, but like you're getting closer to, checking those things off the list. Things are coming off of your plate and you can visually see these things coming off of your plate, no longer on your checklist. So like it feels good.
I agree. I think just simple things like this are actually going to make a big difference at the end of the day.
And some people might hear it and say, that sounds stupid, writing it down. What is that going to do? Like, it feels good checking things off the list.
Actually, yeah, game changing. And I'm in the same boat. I thought a lot of the things I do now were stupid. I thought they're dumb, thought they're a waste of time. Then I do them, and I'm like, it's actually not a bad idea.
Yeah, because you're like, oh, that sounds so cliche. Write down your goals. It's like,
right.
No, write it down.
Exactly.
Write it down.
Write it
check
down.
It off the list.
And then one thing I try to do is I try to work backwards. So say whatever the goal is, finances, whether it's a business, say you want to have $1 million in 10 years. Start 10 years from now, start $1 million. How are you going to get to 900,000? How are you going to get to 800,000? How are you going to get to 700,000? Then just keep moving down, and all of a sudden you're like, I have $0, and this is how I'm going to get to $1 million. And the work's done. Yeah. You just have to execute. Like, the plan is in place.
Yeah, and that's the key. You have this one big goal. So what small goals do you have to hit to get to that big goal?
I think, giving my 2 cents on this, I think meditation is super important. I think every single person should meditate. I thought, and I was going to make a video on this. I haven't made it yet. I might make it, but I thought meditation was for certain types of people. I didn't think it was for everyone. I watched a few videos on it. I decided to give it a shot. I've been doing it for months now. It's absolutely game-changing. I feel like I sleep better at night. I feel like I'm much more there in the moment. I think it's done wonders for me. And everyone I know that's tried it, and you can probably test this as well in a second, they've had fantastic success with it. Another thing, I think social media and being on your phone really kills a lot of things. I feel like that kills productivity. I feel like it's so much easier to scroll through TikTok for an hour than work on a video for an hour. Maybe it's just that dopamine effect. Actually, I think that's the reason why social media is so addicting, because it gives you that dopamine in your mind, and it really just that novelty, I guess you could say, really, really, really just keeps people coming back.
Yeah. So all these social media companies have people where their job is to make it as addicting as possible and release that dopamine effect, which keeps people going back to it and back to it. But I think a lot of people will use social media as almost a way to escape those thoughts and feelings. So me and Kyle talked about this on the last episode. When you're meditating, right? The goal is to empty your mind of all thought.
Right.
But what you're doing is you're really, like, your mind goes to these places and you think about all these things.
Right.
When you're on your phone, you're not going there, right? So those things are constantly in your head.
Right.
So I'm sure you've noticed things that you didn't even know were bothering you came up in your mind while you were meditating. Has that happened?
It has, yes.
So once you think about that, it's like your mind's a computer, right?
Right.
You have all these processes running in the background. Mm-hmm. Whether you see them there or not, all these processes are running.
Right.
And when you meditate, you're thinking about all these things, and it's, dealing with that process that's running and getting it out of your head.
Right.
So I think that's why it helps, like, relax so much. Because you're not thinking about that anymore. Like, you've already dealt with that mentally.
I think that's a fantastic, fantastic way to look at it. I think that computer analogy is really, really spot on. I'll probably actually make a cut up of that when I go to, I guess, promote this podcast, because I think that's actually a very, very, very solid point. So I think you just gave me some good promo right there. But moving on to kind of like one of the last things I want to talk about here.
Before we go on to the last thing, so the last episode, me and Kyle do talk about this at the end of the episode. And I have been slacking on my meditation. So we set a goal where I'm going to do it at least 10 minutes a day until we record next, right? So we encouraged people to do that with us and send in their results. So I would love if you would, send us an email after like a week of meditation. I mean, you've been pretty consistent with it. Do you do it daily?
I do it daily. I started off doing 2 minutes. I started doing 2 minutes. I think I did 3 times a day because it's a lot to start because time moves very slowly.
It's so hard to just focus on your breathing. And Kyle said this, when I said 10 minutes, he's like, listen, it's just like going to the gym, right? If you go and you try to lift all this weight, or you go in and your trainer really, kicks your butt. Right, you're gonna go and you'll be like, "That was miserable. I didn't want to do that."
Right.
But if you start slowly and build up to where you can get to the 10 minutes, it's gonna feel a lot better for you. So start small and build your way up to being able to handle 10 minutes of absolute silence and focusing on breathing.
Exactly. Like if you've never run a day in your life, you're not gonna be able to go out and run a marathon
I'm gonna
right
start
from the
with
jump.
5 miles today.
Yeah,
don't do
unrealistic, completely unrealistic. But if you start with maybe a quarter of a mile, much more of an attainable goal. Absolutely.
You build on it.
How have you felt meditations help you?
It's just dealing with stuff that I didn't want to deal with mentally. Because even though I'm not consciously thinking of certain things that are bothering me, subconsciously they're in my head.
Right.
So you kind of dive into your subconscious and deal with those things that are bothering you, that you don't think are bothering you.
Right.
If that makes sense. That kind of sounds silly.
What do you think are some things that people can kind of cut out of their lives to maybe feel better from a mental health perspective or even a productivity perspective?
I think a big thing is the cell phones, right? People are constantly on their phones and they're constantly looking for a distraction, right? So I feel like I can sit on my couch and scroll through my phone and get absolutely nothing done, but I'm not thinking about the things that I'm worried about getting done.
You don't think anything about it. It's like you might have to drive somewhere. Maybe it's like a 15-minute drive. You got to drive 15 minutes there, 15 minutes back, and then maybe you got to be there for 10 minutes. So a total of 40 minutes, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so much work. I got to go. I got to do this. Even though I guess from a physical perspective, you're probably releasing very minimal energy by doing all of that.
Zero energy.
But someone can sit on their phone for an hour at night before they go to bed at 2 a.m. and scroll through Instagram.
And what are you getting done?
Exactly.
Besides hurting your sleep.
Exactly. I think that's a great point. One thing I think can really help a lot of people, and I know during the pandemic, this has definitely accelerated a lot. I think cutting out as much alcohol as possible is a great way to go about it.
Cutting out alcohol, yeah, because that's detrimental. Like,
I've really been trying to drink as little as possible because it is expensive, and I think it provides short-term happiness. I don't think it provides long-term happiness.
it's a Band-Aid.
Exactly.
You have a torn ACL, put a brace on it.
Exactly. If you're Phillip Rivers, you might get away with that. But
for how long?
exactly. It's
In
not.
the long term, it was detrimental because he probably did more damage by not getting it fixed.
He did just for one game. But still, you're right. That's a great analogy. And I think by cutting out as much alcohol as possible, you're going to feel more productive. And you're just going to feel better physically and mentally overall. I personally feel like, from my experience, I went past yesterday. I played in a golf tournament. I had a couple drinks. I hadn't had a drink for about 2 weeks before that. I have never felt so productive because I'm not the biggest consumer of alcohol. I'm kind of like, maybe out with a friend, sitting around having a few drinks like that. I'm like that type of person. But I feel so much more productive when cutting it out because sometimes I'll work really long days. Like I'll get up at 4, maybe work on, YouTube video, podcast for 4 or 5 hours, go to work for 8 hours, go to my second job after that, get home at like 8 or 9 o'clock. A lot of times if I stayed, because my other job's at a country club, so there's a bar there, if I stayed there and have a drink or two, I am just going to come home and go to bed. I find that by not doing that, just coming right home and just cutting it out as much as possible, I am so much more productive. I'll come home and I'll edit something for a couple of hours. I have seen nothing but positive things from cutting it out. And I also think people rely on it too much. Like, oh, I have to go do this. I need to drink. And I think it's such a good feeling. And this isn't trying to degrade anyone that drinks a lot or likes to have a couple of drinks when they come home from work at night, because there's nothing wrong with that.
No, it's a release. Like, some people could see it as a leisurely activity, and if they can still be productive while they do that, I mean, I guess the quality of what you're trying to do will probably go down. But like, if that's what you use to release, I understand that. So I'm glad you said like, oh, I'm doing this, I need a drink. Like, some people will find an excuse, right? So when we first started doing the podcast, I was like very like, okay, I should probably have a drink to loosen up a little bit. I don't want to be awkward. And I noticed in the episodes where like I was embarrassed afterwards because like I kind of sound stupid there. Like, I'm not articulating my thoughts correctly, right? So I feel like in the last couple episodes, I would probably say like 5 episodes, I was like, all right, I'm not going to drink.
I don't mean to cut you off, but that's going to cut out like right now.
Okay. I used to drink a couple of beers before recording a podcast because I wanted to like loosen up a bit and like bring my personality out.
Right.
But it was detrimental because I would say stupid stuff. And
right.
So people would be like, hey, were you drinking that episode? And it's like, yeah, because I thought I needed it to loosen up. So I've made a point. I'm like, all right, I'm not going to do that anymore. I don't think I'm more comfortable on a mic. I feel like I can have a conversation and still be somewhat entertaining. And I feel like the quality of content has gone up since I stopped doing that.
I agree. And I think it's also just going to lead to you being more comfortable in uncomfortable situations. Because What about like those times you don't have anything to drink? What happens those times? Are you going to be okay? Are you going to be able to function? Or are you going to be miserable the entire time? And I think by doing that, putting yourself in situations where you're not drinking, you're completely sober, you're honestly going to grow a lot as a person. I think your social skills are definitely going to get better. And I think you're going to find that overall you just feel a lot better. And it's just going to feel good to know that you don't need anything in your body to have fun and be fun.
To go back to the injury analogy, right? So you need surgery on your leg, but you just put a brace on it, right? Mm-hmm. That alcohol is a brace, and it's not fixing anything.
Right.
And you're not getting the reps in developing those social skills without it. So go in and, do the reps. It's going to be uncomfortable at first, but do the reps because it's just going to lead to you being more comfortable.
Right. I completely agree. And it just comes down to whether it's whatever we've talked about so far, mental portion, whether it's trying to stop drinking, whatever the case may be, whatever habit you're trying to implement, maybe you want to meditate, it just comes down to putting in the work at the end of the day. And the more you put into something, the more you're going to get out of it.
Exactly. And you're just going to be a better person overall.
Right. Last thing we're going to talk about here before we wrap up. I did mention this a couple seconds ago, but kind of go in a little bit more detail here. How do you think being comfortable or maybe being complacent really affects a person's life or a person in general?
I mean, I kind of got some for talking about like some stuff. I kind of got some stuff for saying being comfortable doesn't lead to, growth. But I don't think... See, this is a tough one. I do think being uncomfortable and getting uncomfortable or comfortable in those uncomfortable situations definitely helps, because the more your comfortability increases, the more, you feel better. But do you feel like if you are comfortable somewhere, you find yourself kind of like staying in that comfortable area and not wanting to push yourself out of that comfort zone?
Yes. And that's part of the reason I started this podcast, because I was like, all right, I'm making YouTube videos for over a year. I feel pretty comfortable talking in front of a camera. I feel like I'm mostly like, obviously you can always improve, so I'm not going to say 100% myself, but I'll say 95% myself in front of a camera. I'm like, this is, I don't want to say a dead end, but I need to do something else. I'm like, what else can I do? And I took a course from Matt Diabella. I took his YouTube course, and he mentioned something, and it just inspired this idea of a podcast. And I was like, that's a fantastic idea. Like I said earlier, it's a great way to network. It's going to be a great way to meet people. It's going to be a great way to do something different. It's going to give me something else to really work towards and be really inspired, because I was getting into a little bit of a rut, I guess you could say, and I wanted to do something else. And I felt very uncomfortable. And you guys, when you listened to the first episode, you heard me talk with Nick at the end of it. I said, even when he was on the way to my house, I was saying, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to start this podcast? Should I pull the plug? That's what I was thinking to myself. And
you have that anxiety. You build up all this in your head.
Exactly.
But the second he sat down and the second you started talking, I'm sure all that fear went away, and it kind of just
As we got into it, yeah, especially because obviously he's been, in front of the camera for many, many years now. So he made me feel very, very comfortable, which is another reason why I really wanted to have him as the first guest, aside from him being a good friend of mine and all those things. But I feel like people really, I think limiting growth, like you said, is a very good way to put it, because I feel like people limit their growth because they don't think something's the best for them because they're uncomfortable. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about going skydiving. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, or something that's potentially going to endanger your life, that's a different story.
Calculated risks.
Yes, but like I talked about in Nick in that last podcast, what's the worst that could happen for me starting a podcast? I waste, maybe $100 on the microphones. I waste a little bit of my time editing, and I catch up with some good friends and maybe meet some new people, and it doesn't go anywhere. That's probably the worst thing that could happen, aside from maybe the camera exploding and everything getting caught on fire, which might be a little unrealistic, but yeah.
But you take out that what if factor that would bother you for a while. What if I did try that?
Right.
Exactly. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then, like I said in that other podcast, I would much rather give it my all, give it a shot. What's the worst that could happen? Do that, as opposed to maybe just look at it over the next 10 years and say, what if I started that? Because that's what I'm saying now. I'm saying, what if I stuck with YouTube the first time? What if I stuck with YouTube the second time? So I'm like, let me just go all in. Let me just stick with it. It's something I really enjoy doing, and let's just see where it comes from. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. And trying these new things, like introducing a podcast, adding the video element to it, like it's more things you're uncomfortable with. Like, this is my first time on a camera, and I was like, I hope I don't freeze. Like, that was something in my head. Like, I hope I don't just... Hi, I'm Chris. I'm with Doubly Negative. Like, I was kind of worried about being on camera.
Right. And like I said in a previous video, it just takes time to get used to. It's just, talking to a mic. And I'm sure that you guys that have listened to this the first episode and then this one, you guys are probably going to say I'm a lot more comfortable. I seem a lot more, vocal. I seem much more myself in front of the camera this time as opposed to the first time. And this goes back to what Chris said. It just comes to putting in the reps and putting in the work. And if you continue to do something and you give it your all, it's going to be really hard to fail at something. But the thing is, if you stay comfortable, I really feel like it's going to be super hard to continue to grow. That's the bottom line, and that's how I feel.
Yeah, so I can give you like a real life example for me with, getting comfortable, being uncomfortable. So I do jiu-jitsu, and there was a point in time where, like, randomly, if I had someone on top of me and they were crushing me, where I was having like mini panic attacks in my head, and even like tapping out to no submission, just like because I was freaking out because I was tired and having someone on top of me. So they have these things called open mats where there's no like class or instruction, where you just go and you roll with the other people that show up. So
right.
There was a big guy there. I said, hey, listen, I was just open with him. I said, I've been like kind of freaking out when people get on top of me, and like when you're tired, you feel like you can't breathe, and you feel like the walls are closing in.
Right.
So it was towards the end of open mat. There was a couple hard rolls before, and I said, hey, you start on top, mount me, and don't let me get up. And I just did that for like 10 minutes, working on trying to get out of that, and breaking that anxiety that I was getting when people were there.
Right. Yeah.
Just putting in the reps. That should be the name of this episode. Put in the reps.
If you take anything away from this episode, just keep in mind putting in the reps. I know we didn't talk about a lot of finance stuff in here, but I also want this podcast to be rolling around productivity and mental health, because in all reality, if your mental health's maybe a little bit weak, if your productivity is not there, it's going to be tough to be successful, really in anything, but also financially. I personally feel like all these things tie in together. We're going to cover things relating to business. We're going to cover things relating to mental health, productivity, and of course, finance as always. Anyway, Chris, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. Where can people find you if they want to know more about you or listen to your podcast or anything along those lines?
I should have looked up the links before, but doubly negative on Instagram. I think it's doubly_negative. If not, I'll put the link in the bio or whatever. But doubly negative. We release episodes every Monday at 5 o'clock. We also have a Patreon. $5 a month, you get a solo podcast from me. You get a blog that Kyle is doing now. You get our episodes completely uncut. And you also get a podcast from Kyle. That's a new development too. So he's going to do a solo one as well. And you can learn a little bit more about living in Bali, taking the risk to, leave a country where you're not comfortable and try it out. So, I mean, there's a lot of, we're pumping out the content. So
all his information will be linked in the description box down below. Thanks so much for listening, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe as always, and I will see you guys in the next one.